VikingsChat.com website. I'm David Erickson, the host and publisher of Minnesota Vikings Chat. This is the 10th episode of Vikings Chat, and so far we've had more than 25,000 views on YouTube for these podcasts. So thank you so much for watching. Appreciate it. Hope we continue to enjoy your loyalty. Now is a slow time between the draft and training camp, and not a lot happens. That's not going to stop us from chatting about the Vikings, is it? So we've got a schedule here for today's podcast. The first topic we're going to talk about is the Vikings who have played for the USFL. And if you haven't heard of the USFL, I'll explain. We'll talk about a helmet cam, an interesting technological development. Rookies, the Vikings new rookies on Twitter. Vikings agreement with TCF Bank Stadium to play there. And the speed of the game questions. So starting off, the USFL started 30 years ago this spring. So if you are young, you may have never heard of the USFL, but the USFL stands for United States Football League. And this topic was prompted by a story by Jeff Pearlman of Sports Illustrated, who did a story on the anniversary, and I thought back about all the Vikings who had played for the USFL. So the league had played 3 seasons, was a competing league, professional league to the NFL, and they played 3 seasons, 1983 to 1985. They played a spring schedule, so it didn't conflict with the NFL's fall schedule, and they sort of started falling apart when at the end they wanted to match up head-to-head against the NFL and decided to do a fall schedule. Among other things, financing was a big problem with this league, so that's sort of why it fell apart. But they made a big splash and were taken seriously because they, off the bat, signed 3 Heisman Trophy winners in a row to high-priced contracts right out of college. So they're taking the talent pool from college and swiping it from the NFL, basically. Among the names, one you'll find familiar, if not all of them, Herschel Walker, who should put a frown on any Vikings fan's face. Not a proud moment in the Vikings history. Herschel Walker was the first signing out of college, and he signed, I think, a $3 million deal, which was a lot of money at that time. Doug Flutie, quarterback Doug Flutie, signed with the USFL out of college, and a running back named Mike Rozier, who was a Heisman Trophy winner but didn't really amount to much when he entered the NFL. So the Vikings had, for the USFL, they had 23 players in all who played for the USFL and for the Vikings. 8 of those players were scabs for the 1987 strike year Vikings squad, which after the strike was settled, you'll remember, or maybe not, went within a dropped pass to the NFC Championship game. They lost a very, very close game to the Washington Redskins, who eventually went on to win the Super Bowl so that won the Super Bowl in '87. There are some notable Vikings names that played for the USFL, and I'm going to go through them in order of importance to the Vikings. So I'll start with the most important one, and that name is Gary Zimmerman. So Gary Zimmerman was a tackle that played, I think, 7 years for the Vikings and then 4 more years for the Broncos. He was traded to the Broncos in preseason. He is in the Hall of Fame. He was an outstanding tackle. The Vikings consistently had passing records and led the league in rushing one year while he was playing for the Vikings during that period. So Keith Millard is another name that played for the USFL. Millard was, of course, an outstanding defensive tackle, almost unstoppable for 2 or 3 years. He played in 2 Pro Bowls in 1988 and 1989. He currently holds the sack record for defensive tackle with 18, which he set in 1989. And in that same year, he played on the same line with Chris Dolman, which is one of the reasons he had such an outstanding record with the Vikings. He played with Chris Dolman in the same line. Dolman in that year, 1989, had 21 sacks. So that was just an insane defensive line for the Vikings back in 1989. So Millard also was named Defensive Player of the Year for the '89 season too. So he was an amazing defensive tackle for the Vikings with a pretty damn good defense and an amazing defensive line too. Anthony Carter, wide receiver, played in the USFL. He played, let me go back and tell you which teams they played with. So Zimmerman played with, in 1984, played with the LA Express of the USFL. And Keith Millard in 1985 played for the Jacksonville Bulls. Millard also played for the Vikings from 85 to 90. He played for the Seahawks in 1992, the Packers in 92, and the Eagles in 93. Zimmerman's tenure with the Vikings was 86 through 92, and with Broncos from 93 to 97. Anthony Carter played with the Vikings from 1985 to 1993. In 1983, he played in the USFL for the Michigan Panthers, and he attended University of Michigan too. So the USFL had a regional draft. What they're trying to do is match up players from college that would be familiar to in their hometowns. So it was sort of a unique draft that they had that way, but it was a marketing ploy as much as anything. And then Carter also played for the Lions from 94 to 95. Now, Chris Carter had one of the most dominant games in Vikings playoff history. He, in 1987, in a divisional playoff game against the 49ers, who were the dynasty 49ers with Joe Montana, the team that always made it to the playoffs and won 3 Super Bowls. Carter had 10 receptions for a then NFL record of 227 yards. In that same game, he had 1 carry for 30 yards, and the Vikings upset the 49ers 36-24. The 49ers were a 13-2 team at that time, so it was a major, major upset. During that whole playoff postseason, Carter amassed 642 all-purpose yards in the 1987 playoff games, and that's a single postseason record that stands today, I believe. He played with Ahmad Rashad and Chris Carter, so he was paired with a couple of superb receivers. Carter came in at the tail end of Anthony Carter, AC's career. So, yeah, Carter was an explosive receiver. And we mentioned Herschel Walker, and of course Herschel Walker was the primary player in the infamous trade that built a Super Bowl dynasty for the Dallas Cowboys. The Cowboys fleeced the Vikings with that trade that sent Herschel Walker to the Vikings for a zillion picks and draft picks and a bunch of players too. Herschel Walker played in 1983 for the USFL's New Jersey Generals. He was the superstar of that league. He played with the Cowboys from 1986 to 1989, and again from 1996 to 1997. He played with the Vikings from 1989 to 1991, played with the Eagles from 92 to 94, and the Giants in 1995. So there's Herschel Walker. We also had David Howard, a linebacker who played in the USFL. Howard played in 1984 for the LA Express. He was traded to Dallas as part of the Herschel Walker trade as well. Howard played. He was a pretty good player. He played for the Vikings from 85 to 89, then traded to the Cowboys, played for the Cowboys from 89 to 90, and the Patriots from 91 to 1992. So there's another USFL player. Dave Huffman was a center/guard. He played mostly guard for the Vikings. I think maybe exclusively guard for the Vikings. From 1979 to 1983, and then for the 83 and 84 seasons, he defected to the USFL to play for the Arizona Wranglers. And then he came back to the Vikings from 1985 to 1990, He was a very good player. He was the sports personality for a morning radio show on KQRS for many years, and he tragically died in a car accident in 1998. So David Huffman is a pretty good contributor to the Vikings during those years. Chris Foote was a veteran center who played for the Colts from 80 to 81, the Giants from 82 to 83, and then 84 and 85 he played in the USFL. In 84 he played for the LA Express. In 1985 he played for the Tampa Bay Bandits, and then played for the Vikings from 87 to 1990. So he was a veteran NFL player who defected and then came back, but bounced around the league a little bit. The rest are names you probably wouldn't recognize. There's a whole list of them. We've got them up at MinnesotaVikingsChat.com, and I'll leave a link in the show notes as well. But so with the 30th anniversary of the USFL, thought I'd run down some trivia so you can impress your friends or win some bar trivia contests if you remember all this stuff. So USFL, all right, good time. So let's wrap it up for this week. So what do you think about the podcast, about the topics here? Leave your comments below, and visit MinnesotaVikingsChat.com too, and click on the subscribe tab at the top to sign up for our weekly Vikings Chat newsletter so you don't miss any of the content. You can follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/MinnesotaVikingsChat. Like that, of course. And follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/MNVikingsChat, and use the Vikings Chat hashtag when talking about the Vikings online. During every Vikings game, we have an active chat, so join us then. But use the Vikings Chat hashtag so we know you're talking Vikings, can find you. And finally, make sure you subscribe to the Vikings Chat YouTube channel, and so you don't miss any of these wonderful podcasts. 25,000 and counting. So let's wrap it up for today. Until next week, go Vikings!